All right, so I just finished a full body workout. So I kind of want to get a stretch somewhat in every area of my body, but again, I do want to be stretchful about my stretching and feel into where my body needs it. So let's get started. As you know, I like to start in some form of position that's going to give me an idea of what things feel like. Today I'm feeling like being on my bottom. To start, I'm actually just going to windshield wiper back and forth and see what it feels like when I do this. And I can already feel by windshield wipering and getting a twist in my torso, I can feel that I'm tight in my hip flexors. So I'll definitely need to stretch into those hips today. But I've also worked other parts of my body, and so I want to make sure that I sort of round it out a little bit. And I'm also feeling a little bit of tightness because I'm on my arms at the moment. I can feel that sort of up in my shoulder area, I've got some tightness in there. So that will be another spot to focus on. So again, once you have a good idea of where your body is at today, then you can move on to your stretching. So while we're here, let's come down on our backs. And sometimes what I like to do to sort of open up that hip flexor, I sometimes even feel kind of like a little pop when I do this, is put one foot over top of your knee, and then you can bring your other leg in with your arm. You can also just leave it free, whatever feels good to you. I like to bring it in, and then I like to use my other hand, so in this case it's going to be my left hand, to push outward on that knee. And now we don't want to push on the socket and hurt the knee, but we more so want to push just below it. And think about pulling the leg away from the stomach area. That's how I like to think of it. And if you're tight in there, you'll feel that exact feeling. So let's stay here for a bit. Sometimes in this position too, you can feel if your hips are a little off kilter. I definitely feel like mine is swaying a certain way. And again, these are good observations and things we can make note of and use to our advantage. Feel free to readjust as you need to. Sometimes your hand might need a break from pushing, so feel free to take that break. But give it the time it needs. I never like to rush these stretching moments. I think sometimes rushing through stretching is where we lose its benefit. So I already feel like mine is releasing a little bit, so I'm going to move to the other side. So this time I'm going to put my right foot over top of my left knee. I'm going to pull the leg in, and I'm just going to push slightly, and again I already felt that little pop. Push slightly on the leg and sort of separate. It feels like you're sort of separating this area from this area. Remembering to breathe. Sometimes taking deep breaths can help deepen the stretch. Feel free to play with your breath. I know a lot of the times they talk about breathing in yoga and you might kind of think it's a farce, but actually if you play around with your breathing, you'll feel the difference. And again, do what feels good to you. So if deep, heavy breaths are really working into that area, do deep, heavy breaths. If your normal breathing is doing just fine, work with that. Readjust for a second. Again, I always like to pay attention to what other parts of my body are doing. So I don't want to tense my hand up in doing this stretch. I'm just giving it a little loosey-goosey time. Awesome. So let's come out of that. Let's come up and let's sort of flip ourselves to the other side, and let's come into sort of a wide-legged pose here. And I'm actually going to try to sit right down on my bottom here. So do where you are, seat yourself where you feel comfortable. So if you're up higher and you're sort of on your feet, that's fine. Again, I want you to be comfortable where you are. If you feel like you can, bring your feet out and sit right down on that bottom. And I'm bringing myself a little more forward on my mat, because what we can do in this pose is we can actually bring ourselves back and get a nice stretch in the front here, all the way into the knee. And then we can sort of open up the front of our body while we're doing that. Keep that breath going. Feel into your body. What are the little minute feelings that you're feeling at the moment? Are you feeling any tweaks in the knees? Maybe if so, bring yourself up further. Again, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to be in a position that is servicing you. I'm actually going to come down on my forearms, deepen the stretch a little bit. You can stay where you are, but feel free to join me. And breathe. This is pointing out to me how tight my neck is. And this could be partially from my workout because I did lift some weights, but also it can be from your job, which I spent all day on the computer, so that's also probably part of it. I feel like coming down further, again, you do not need to do that. put your body where it needs to be, but my body wants to come all the way down. So I'm gonna let that happen. I'm gonna bring my hands overhead. To deepen that stretch. I'm really feeling it in my quads. And I did some squats today, which were quad focused, so this feels really good. If your knees come up a bit, that's okay. I want you to be comfortable. Mine are coming off the mat a bit, and that's okay. I'm also feeling some tightness in my lower back. Another thing that we can focus on. So like I said, or have said before, I don't ever have a plan going into these stretches. I work with my body as it tells me what it wants. So every movement we make, we can assess and then adjust and also give it what it needs. So stay here for as long as you need. I feel like I've had enough. A little bit of tingling in my hands, not a bad tingling, but a tingling nonetheless. So I'm going to slowly come up and take your time doing this. And before I move into a different position, I just want to feel, let me just move this way. I just want to feel into how my body's feeling after that stretch or that pose. Let the blood come back to my fingers. And I'm feeling some warmth coming into my legs after putting it in that position for a little bit. So I'm kind of in this sort of tabletop position. And while we're here in this tabletop position, we can open up the upper body, since I am noticing some tension in there. You can stay in a tabletop position where your legs are straight forward. I actually like to come into that wide position, so you can bring both your knees out to the corner of your mat. And then I'm going to bring myself all the way down, and sort of like you want to put your chin onto the mat. You don't have to have your chin on the mat, but come down as far as is comfortable and really give yourself a nice stretch in that upper back. You can even put your forehead on the mat. And play with where your hands are. Some people like to put them over top of their head in a prayer pose. Some people just like to leave them on the ground flat, kind of where I'm feeling it today. Sometimes I do go over my head, but today this feels good. And you can rock a little bit too. I really like to think about my back opening up. And rock onto my head and come back. Again, this is all about you, so feel into it. For some reason, I'm feeling like moving and it's feeling good on my lower back. So that's what I'm gonna do. And actually, I'm noticing by doing this that I'm getting a nice stretch in my lower back when I bring it up in sort of that cat-cow position. So let's do that. Again, this is all about listening to your body and how it feels. And I'm feeling like this position, oh yeah, is giving me a really nice stretch back here. So I'm going to push away from the ground, sort of arch my back and breathe. And I'm getting a really nice stretch back here because I'm pretty tight back here. Go on my fingertips for a second, see how that feels. Again, we want to play around. The movement feels good. Going between cat and cow, you can do that. Right now I'm enjoying this one position here. So I'm going to stay here for as long as my body wants. We sort of pulse a little bit. I can feel the stretch deepen in my back, which is lovely. And while it might look like I'm just doing a weird rocking position, I'm really feeling into, for me, it's the lower back, and feeling how when I move, it really gives me a good stretch and release in the back. Awesome. Let's come up. And I think we're going to stand. Again, let's just take a second and see how that feels. Rock back and forth. We just spent a lot of time with a bent knee, so you might feel some warmth in behind the knees, and that's okay. All right, let's do, I'm feeling, because my upper body needs a little stretch here, I'm going to clasp my hands behind my back. And initially what I'd like to do with this is, again, feel my body out. And the way I find best to do this is by rocking my head back and forth, and often I get cracks. You might not. You might be less tight than myself in this area. And sometimes you can look further back. And again, rocking back and forth. You can look down and rock back and forth. And not only are you getting some of the cracks out, but you're feeling where the most tension is. So I can feel for myself, definitely when I stretch to this side, I feel more in this part of my neck than when I stretch to this side. So I know I'm tighter on this side. So I know that when I'm moving around, I want to focus on really stretching that out. And then stay up here for as long as you want. You can even bring yourself back and stretch yourself this way. That's going to give you more of your lower back and open up your chest. I'm going to bring myself forward. So I'm going to bend forward from the hip and bring my hands to the sky. And I love this stretch because it's getting a lot of different areas. So I'm getting a stretch in my legs. I'm getting a stretch in my shoulders. And I'm still feeling a little bit of that stretch in my lower back as well. Now your feet can be super far apart. They can be close together all the way. Whatever feels good to you. For me today, I kind of feel like being somewhere in the middle. And then I like to move around a bit. And pulse. Really give that neck the time it needs, the shoulders the time it needs. You can soften your knees. They don't have to be super straight. Actually, sometimes it's better to soften the knees so that you're not putting too much pressure on them. So you can get a little bend in the knees. I'm going to unclasp my hands and bring them to the ground and do a little rocking back and forth here. Just see how that felt. Wiggle my fingers. Mine tend to lose circulation after a certain time of keeping them together like that, clasped. I like to wiggle them and get the blood flow back. So let's come down in sort of a yogi squat pose. And something that I figured out in moving myself around a bit was, if you're going to go up into the classic crow pose where you're actually balancing on the backs of your arms, but instead of doing that, if you sort of just rock back and forth, you give yourself and you push with your arms in between your legs, you're giving yourself a stretch in that hip area and the inside of your legs by using your arms to pull them apart. And in the same way, I feel sort of an opening in my arms. This is also really good for the feet because they're rolling back and forth, so we're giving them the time they need. We often forget about our feet, and they're just as important as the rest of our body. They're really important in balance. So rocking back and forth helps to stretch them out and give them the mobility that they need to continue working. You can stay in one position if it's feeling really good and it's really opening up your hips, or you can just rock back and forth, whatever feels best for you. And play around when you're in sort of the up pose and deepen the stretch by really pushing your elbows into your legs. So just really play around with it and see what feels good for you. All right. Let's come up into that lunge position and we'll end this session by doing each side here. So you can start in a more active lunge position and stay there and pulse there for as long as you need, just to get a feeling. Again, I said my hips were tight, so I'm feeling that stretch every time I bounce. And then when you're ready, you can bring your foot down. And what you would think about doing here is tucking the bottom under. So so I have my left foot up first, bringing your right hip forward, tucking your bottom under. And while it might look like I'm just sitting in a neutral position, I'm actually focusing on doing that. And I'm getting a really good stretch in the hip area. And I'm feeling this nice pull when I push down on this knee or pull away. So again, stay here for as long as you need to. And then you can rock back and forth just to see how that feels afterwards. I'm going to move to the other side. So my right foot forward. Again, I'm tucking my bottom under, pushing my left hip forward this time. And concentrating on getting that nice stretch in the hip area. We'll rock back and forth, see how that feels. Getting a nice stretch in the groin and hips. All right. So we can just end this session in a seated position. Feel out how everything feels. And just remember, keep listening to my body.